All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and or persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is live and is called Reality, thanks to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Project Director, to Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and Cruce Starnes, Audio and Prompter, and Dolores Harris is here because we're now moving into Studio A this evening. And 2 years ago, we also called our segment Reality. This week, the Banking Cartel tried to keep me from retweeting the teleprompter for that old segment. So I'm going to put it right back at the end of this week's teleprompter. It would be impossible to defeat the Banking Cartel, and at the center of the Banking Cartel, the Black Nobility, without help from the critical mass of humanity that sees very clearly how corrupt everything is. Pat Dugstad, and his Twitter name is Mr. Probdeem, showed me what the Banking Cartel tried and failed to censor. What you're hearing in this series on DCTV is reality. What you're mostly hearing elsewhere is only a nightmare and lies and propaganda that's brought to you by the Banking Cartel. The last 2 videos in the series were called The Corrupted Global System is in its Death Throes and The Way We Live Together in Our World. As you may know, the Banking Cartel mounted a major scalar attack on me on the 8th of June. Some of you were concerned about whether my speech was affected. I've recovered from the attack. The bankers attacked me again on the 12th of July, and there were no effects. I want you to study my response to their attack. This spells out their defeat. Clearly, if they say I'm defeated, and I'm not, then it's pretty clear I'm not defeated. Excuse me, the teleprompter is, can you scroll back? The reason I want it, can you go back? The teleprompter is scrolling in the wrong direction. Can you go back? Okay, well, I'm just going to have to speak extemporaneously. We're obviously having some kind of technical difficulties. And that's not surprising because the Banking Cartel likes to hack into DCTV. And, yeah, they do that all the time. Excuse me. Oh, and the mic is now not working. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sorry about the glitches, but well, we'll just manage. The corruption in the world's money is described in detail. I've described the Jesuits. Their power has been stripped from them along with any of the world's wealth. We're working together in transition to a kinder world. The Jesuits tried to cover up their role. This only established the fact that they are guilty. And one of the people who's been following me for a long time wrote in to say, "Hi, Karen, love you and love your work. If you look at the totality of the evidence, especially what's come out in the last few years, I don't think there are any lingering doubts anymore about what happened on 9/11. It certainly was a controlled demolition. The presence of the aluminum nanites in the demolition residue is proof of weapons-grade explosives used in the demo charges for the elevator columns. The elevators had in fact been through a modernization process less than 6 months prior to the incident. The totality of the evidence now is a stunningly cohesive picture of governmental treachery of staggering proportions. I believe it should be a part and parcel now of your entire argument as to the extent of governmental control exercised by the central banks. It supplements and supports your arguments perfectly, and I believe at this point should be a part of your entire montage. I believe if you review the evidence, even just that offered through the Fifth Estate, we have gotten way past speculation. Thank you for your work, Karen. You were deeply instrumental in my awakening process. Thank you. Dear people, we humanity are working together in transition to a kinder world. The transition is going to eliminate corruption in the world's money. I'm in the center of this process. I've been working together with the critical mass of humanity to assemble the ingredients for the transition. The main ingredient is awareness. I believe that the less said, the better, to avoid confusion. The process is straightforward. The transition will ultimately involve everyone, although it's the critical mass of people who are leading the fight against the banking cartel and its corruption. There was only one article about me in the mainstream media. That story was in Spanish, and it was deleted. Okay, now I'm going to speak extemporaneously. And the reason that I do that is because I've found out that when I'm reading the teleprompter, many people find me less convincing. Some people thought, even though I'm the one that writes the teleprompter, that I was just following what other people were telling me to say. But that's definitely not the case. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not going to take dictation from anybody. That's just, I'm a pretty cantankerous person. And the whole point about this episode is what was said a year and a half ago, or actually in the 2017, where we were talking about reality. And if you go through and you read the teleprompter there, you're going to see very detailed information. You're going to see that there was an attempted nuclear attack, and you're going to see there's a link which will give you the story, which was only a month after that attempted attack, and you can see the number of people in the military that were fired. They were there to take charge over nuclear weaponry, and the newspaper reporters reported that. And then you will also see in the teleprompter in 2017 that there was an attempted first nuclear strike against the Russians. Now, what's happened is that the people in the militaries know about the fact that there were these attempted nukes and first nuclear strikes, and they basically set out on their own. There's been a very in-depth insurrection, and I can tell you that that insurrection continues to this day. Whenever I go out driving, there are helicopters who buzz around very, very nearby. In my neighborhood, I can see the military aircraft, and once there was the most incredible, I don't know what the way that aircraft, you couldn't describe it. It was very, very large, and it didn't look like anything in the books. But suffice it to say that there are enough people in the military who are really getting themselves organized, and they understand that there are a lot of people who also can't add things up, and they realize that the mainstream media is just telling everybody lies. And the more of these people there are, they reach out to each other. The only reason that we haven't succeeded in getting through to everybody is because of the it's called mind control technology. The way we think, we all process. Our brains are working like modems, and we're hacked. Our thought processes are hacked, and there are some of us who have learned how to work ourselves loose from these mind control weapons. And one of the best ways to do that is actually through music. Music, when people realize how music helps them think and continue to process their thoughts independently, they'll realize that music is really one of the best weapons that we have as humanity. So the chances actually that we all manage to take back our world from the bankers, our prospects are excellent. And the reason that I know this is because of the software that came from the National War College and the political, his name was Jacek Kubler, the political scientist who developed this software. It's 90 to 95% accurate, and it tells us that, yes, the military powers of the world they're waiting for all of us to get ourselves organized. And it's taking a very long time because of the way that we're doing this transition. We have to do it peacefully. One of the articles that was just put up, because the banking cartel is trying desperately to derail our transition, they were trying to get us confused. They'd been doing that for a long time. And what we do, for example, when I upload the videos from the episodes on DCTV, you'll see that there's interference with the sound. And that's also one of the reasons that I put all of the information out on the internet in writing, so that people can see what we're trying to say. And the fact that there's interference in the sound, that just alerts people that the banking cartel is trying to hide things from them. So they're working at cross purposes, obviously. But anyway, so what I was saying about what happened with this episode is that when they tried to stop me, and they tried to attack me, and then they tried to make it very difficult for me to function. For whatever reason, I can't explain it, but I'm still functional, as you can see. And so this didn't stop anyone at all. It just made us more resolved to continue. And we will continue. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm not going to end the things here. I did have prepared comments that I was going to go through, but since we're now in Studio A, I didn't want to sit and read from paper. So I'll just have to tell you some of the things that you can see in the teleprompter that we wrote in 2017. One of the things was about the CIA having written a memo where they invented the term conspiracy theorist. That was to make people feel that they shouldn't question the government. But obviously, once you realize that the CIA invented the word conspiracy theorist. That backfired. And then another thing that I wrote in the teleprompter 2 years ago was about the fact that the CIA tried to bribe me. There's shares in a company that many of the CIA people had gotten the shares, and I was given 1 million shares. You can see them. I put the shares in my safety deposit box, but these shares are not getting funded from the Global Debt Facility. And let's explain a little bit about the Global Debt Facility. That's where I come in. The Global Debt Facility, that's a trust fund that was established by Ferdinand Marcos and Jose Rizal that contains the world's wealth. And they put it at the World Bank. They created the World Bank just so that they had a place to put the Global Debt Facility. That's a cooperative, and it's there, and that's the way we're going to transition. All of the governments are going to be reconstituted, and all of the military powers that have figured out that the governments are all corrupt. They're all corporations. The amount and the extent and the depth of the corruption is so incredible that that's one of the reasons it's taking us quite some time, because nobody wants to believe that when they study a subject in the university, the tenure system is there to prevent people from learning. The universities are there to prevent people from learning. Nobody wants to recognize that. It's just so profoundly distressing that that's one of the reasons that we don't come to grips with it. But we have to come to grips with it because the only alternative is World War III and extinction. And because all of the military powers of the world understand that that's the only alternative, we're just sort of stuck here in the middle. And I'm here to, because I've inherited the infrastructure that Ferdinand Marcos and Jose Rizal set up, and because I'm a lawyer, I know how to make the little ties. It's kind of like if you weave a web in little strands. Yes, I'm very patient, and it's taken me a very, very long time. But the legal strands are there. And so you know that we can transition very peacefully, and we can all inherit the wealth that's there in the world for all of us. And we're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to all stay put because, as I said, these little strands that I've painstakingly woven, they're all connected. And what they're connected to the world's military powers. Because, as I said, nobody wants to go into World War III, and that's our only alternative. And we can be sure of that because of this this software that came from the National War College in the United States. And if you look at the correspondence that I've kept, and it's not just that I've kept it, because obviously if I was doing this all by myself, it wouldn't go anywhere. But there are people, very clever people, who have, they've showed how when I tweet something, they can recover it. So it's all out there in an incredible filing system. And for example, the videos that we've been doing in DCTV, we've done over 200 of them. And YouTube, by the way, is part and parcel of this corruption. YouTube tried to take them down, and then they put them right back. Why did they put them back? Because they had no choice, because we're actually interconnected to all the military powers in the world. And as for the legal documentation, I've been getting a lot of training because the banking cartel tells me something, and then I look at it a little more closely and I realize what they intended, and so I won't go there. So I learned what we can do with the common law rather than using the maritime law, which is what the bankers use. And when I went and looked at the maritime law, I could see that there was something called a notarial protest. And that's where the bankers thought that they could steal the world's wealth. And so what I did was I used their system, and they used the notarial protest. And then I said, well, by the way, all that wealth, that belongs to us. And so that's where we are. We've documented that all that wealth belongs to us. And every time the bankers try to take it away, it doesn't go anywhere. We just learn from it. You'll see in the next week's episode that I've been talking also about the Jesuits and the Jesuits. They were the ones who assembled this wealth to begin with, and who tried to undo all of the governments of the world. And now we've actually gone into the heart of the Jesuits. That's who Jose Rizal was. He went there and he turned it around for them. That's how we got the global debt facility. That's how that's their undoing. And I'm here just following up on these great geniuses, because the mechanism, it's you can get lost in the details, but the mechanism is that there's a rule, which is if you say that you own something and you haven't proven it after 50 years, your claim goes away. It gets stale. That's under a Roman concept called the statute of limitations. And so what Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos did was they set up this trust fund, and after 50 years, there was no claim left over. The claims are all with humanity. And so that's how we know that the bankers don't have any of the world's gold. And so one of the things I'm going to cut ahead, because next week's session I'm talking about gold. And where's the gold? Well, the gold is with us. All the world's gold is with us. And there's a lot more of it than people know about, because it's been thousands and thousands of years that our history has been covered up from us. All of the facts that you think you know, they've been corrupted. What the Jesuits did was they took all of the information, all of the original records, and they erased them, and then they came up with their own version. But in the meantime, the people in Moscow State University went back and they looked at some of the good scientists, and they realized that all of our history had been falsified. So whereas most historians, when they talk about the history books, they say that the civilized world was starting in 5000 BC. Well, no. We know for a fact that it's actually 10,000 BC and probably before that. And we know that because of the way there was a map in the ceiling of the very oldest pyramid. And that map can be dated from astrological information, the sky map, so that they know exactly that pyramid was over 10,000 years old. So yes, the history that you think you know, that's wrong. the much of the science that you think you know. That's wrong too. And we're going to take a very long time to go back and reconstruct our sciences. And as far as the journalists, they're working from the Banking Cartel's press. So they're not, even if they wanted to be honest and to give you good journalism, they have no place to publish it. So yes, that's what we have now. We're all working together to reconstruct our history, much of our science. A lot of it is, if you go back and look at what we've been talking about, I've gotten a lot of documentation on cures for cancer. Yes, we've been badly misinformed, and the only way actually to correct this is by working together, and you're going to need to do this in groups. And the reason that you have to do it in groups is because this mind control technology works in a way that if you haven't worked with somebody else, you won't really recognize how you've been affected. So you do have to, no matter how able you are to use logic and any of your other skills, if you don't realize that you've been, your brains have been, your thought processes have been hijacked. And when you're working with this, it's called scalar weaponry, you can sometimes sense how this has happened, and you develop ways of working around it. So, for example, I take notes so that although one day I'll know something, the next day it's as if it's been erased. So I have to go back and I have to look at my notes to see what it is that the gaps that are there. And that's also what's so important in the information that we've been making available on DCTV, because you can compare and see what information has gone missing, and that's there, that record is there. And the people that are working together, they're all working to make themselves free. And actually, the most important ingredient is skepticism. But in addition to that, you have to work with people. You have to get involved with them. One of the disappointing things, I've been talking to friends for a very long time, and especially the ones that are very sensitive to this weaponry, you can't get through. It's as if they don't hear you. And it's not hard actually to discover who's sensitive to this information, because they won't hear you. It's as if the words are not coming across. I've repeated the ending for our segment on reality from 2 years ago. Thank you for listening to another segment in the series on the network of global corporate control. The banking cartel is no longer hidden, and its propaganda and fake news are no longer credible. Reality is quite different than the banking cartel portrays. This means its ability to pit us against one another in World War III has ended, and so has its right to tax us and to poison us. Meanwhile, we have exposed how the network of global corporate control is poisoning all of the earth through chemtrails. They're bankrupt, and we are winding them down in the global debt facility.